Welcome to another edition of Hey Bobby with Senior VP of the Cleveland Guardians, Bob DiBiasio, joining us here on WAKR. And Bobby, a lot of times you and I have looked back at some of the great Cleveland players of days gone by, and we could go on and on. But one of the guys, and I looked at, he passed away this week in history, that might not get his just due in Cleveland baseball history is Earl Averill. And I only know a lot about him because of you. You've really educated me on how talented and how good this outfielder was for Cleveland way back in time. So I thought with his passing this week in history, maybe you could reflect a little bit on one of the greats in Cleveland baseball history, in Earl Averill.
Yeah, Earl Averill, Ray, obviously one of baseball's all-time greats. He's a National Baseball Hall of Famer, was elected in 1975, certainly in the Guardians Hall of Fame now. His nickname was the Earl of Snohomish. Snohomish, Washington is where he's from. So the name Earl of Snohomish. He started his career late, not until he was 26 years old did he make his major league debut. He played 13 total years, 11 of those in a Cleveland uniform. His number 3 was the third number retired in our history, in our franchise history. Obviously, Bob Feller's number 19 was the first number that was retired, then Lou Boudreau's number 5, and then Earl Averill's number 3. Going back, he played from 1929 to 1939. He hit third in our lineup. I have to double check my history. There might have been a reason he was number 3 because he hit third in the lineup. That's why Babe Ruth was number 3. Lou Gehrig was number 4. That's how they did it when numbers entered the world of baseball. They didn't always have numbers on their back. That didn't happen until the 20s, the late 20s, I believe. And this might have been the case with Earl. He not a big guy. He's like 5'9", 170, left-handed hitter. Turned into a home run hitter late in his career. But his 226 career home runs, think about it again, 1929 to 1939, he ended up hitting 226 career home runs, and that record stood as the top, the number 1 home run hitter in our franchise history until 1996. So that's how prolific he was.
Earl Averill, and a 6-time All-Star.
Right. He's still ranked in the top 10, 14 categories, I think, offensive categories, still in the top 10. He's number 1 in extra base hits and total bases and ribbies and runs and triples. And, he's third, fourth, and fifth, and a whole bunch of them, number 3rd in hits and doubles still. Obviously, just a remarkable athlete, and a really good center fielder as well. A left-handed hitter, I think I said, lefty hitter and threw right.
Speaking of hitting outfielders, Bobby, this week we'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about Manny. Manny Ramirez is going to be honored at the stadium this coming weekend. Well-deserved. I know you have a lot to do with putting that all together, and you saw Manny Ramirez as a really young guy come up and be maybe the best right-handed hitter in the American League for a decade.
Well, I think in his generation, you could argue, if you sit down and with baseball nuts and have a libation and discuss certain things in the game, who is the best right-handed hitter of a certain generation? You talk about Manny Ramirez's era, his generation. He's got to be right there at the top of the list as the top right-handed hitters. I would consider Barry Bonds and Ken Griffey Jr. from the left side in that generation. But certainly Manny needs to be in that discussion as the top right-handed hitter. I will never forget when he was drafted #1 by us. We're Cleveland Stadium days, so there's not the kind of facilities that we have at Progressive Field at Cleveland Stadium. And so all the draft picks that were signed, we were at Baldwin Wallace College using their baseball field to just get a look at these kids. The pitchers throwing off to the side. We had some of our BP pitchers come and throw to the kids, and Manny Ramirez was hitting balls. The whole Baldwin Wallace baseball team and their coach came to watch to see who these kids were that are just becoming professional. And, you know, for certain players on BW, it was like, do I have a chance? You know, let me see what these guys have. And all of a sudden, Manny Ramirez steps in the batter's box, and every one of those kids and the coach, as I was standing near him, they were just doing wow. They like, even in batting, we've never seen balls hit this far on this field ever. And this is a high school kid out of George Washington High School in the Bronx, the USA Today Player of the Year. Mickey White was our scouting director then, and was the man instrumental in getting Manny into our organization. And his 1999 season, when he drove in 165 runs, is just mind-boggling. That team, the only team in franchise history, you know, we've been around 123 seasons in the American League, and we've only scored more than 1,000 runs once in all that period of time, and that was 1999. Robbie Alomar had a ridiculous offensive season that year, and Manny drove in 165. His 1998 and 1999 combined seasons, just go look up baseballreference.com and look at the two-year span of how he just dominated American League pitching in those 2 years. Fun-loving kid when he was with us, worked his tail off. That's one thing that I will make sure that when we talk about the Jim Thomes and the Manny Ramirez's, who started batting 7th and 8th in our lineup in the early 90s, and moved their way up to middle of the order hitters, that Baerga, Penny Lofton and that group, with Charlie Manuel as their batting coach, they worked their tails off to become the best they could be and elite offensive players in the game of baseball. So we're looking forward to honoring Manny, so deserving, as a #1 draft pick of ours, who certainly made his mark during those powerhouse years of the 90s.
Senior VP with the Cleveland Guardians, Bob DiBiasio, with us from WAKR. And Bobby, we've talked a lot about statistics and everything. And in the world of analytics, there are statistics out the roof, to say. When you look at it, and you and I are baseball fans, when you look at a baseball player, heck, when I grew up, you know what I looked at? I looked at batting average. That's what I always looked at on the back of the baseball cards. I looked at the batting average. What do you as a fan look at, the #1 statistic for a ball player?
Right. Didn't we look at the back of a baseball card to see how many times a guy hit 300? Right. That was, if you were a 300 hitter, then you were an elite performer. And then, as you say, then analytics come into the game. I have to be honest and upfront, since we're friends, and I can't lie to you. I don't know what all these newfangled stats. I can't figure it out. My brain can't comprehend what the WRC squared or whatever the hell it is. I'm just not there. I don't, but I will say, in having conversations over the years with baseball people, that the OPS, the on base plus slugging, is really one of those statistics that really does give, I think, a better value of an offensive production standpoint than just batting average, because it includes walks. It's how often do you get on base, and then how often do you drive the ball, and that means doubles, triples, and homers, which have an easier time of plating runs, generating runs in offense. So I think I have succumbed to that one, that OPS might be one of the most important stats for me. And then whip, I think, for pitching side, which is walks and hits per inning pitched. So it's WHIP, walks plus hits per innings pitched. That's an effective statistic to look at how much does a pitcher limit activity on the bases. And it's not just strikeouts and things of that nature that you look for. I think those two, we used to do the whip by hand. Back in the day, we had 3-ring notebooks and had to do day by day books with little pencils, fine pencils, and our average book that you had that gave all the averages before calculators were on your desk. And I say these things in the office, and the young guys just look at me like I'm an idiot, but but it's the way we had to do it back then. Phil Seggy wanted the whip, and he wanted the actual ERA. We had to do it by hand. An actual ERA for a reliever is that runner that's on base when you come in a game, that belongs to you, not the guy who just left, not the pitcher. The inherited runner, if he scores, that run goes to the previous pitcher who put that man on base. But the actual ERA for a reliever counts. That runner counts as his. So that gives you a little bit better sense of effectiveness for a bullpen guy.
I could have used you during my days of Stratomatic baseball.
Yeah, we all love that game. I'm glad I played it as a kid because it helped. And then all of a sudden, when Elias Sports Bureau was spitting out reams of paper in the general manager's office with certain statistics, we were in heaven.
We sure were. Hey, thank you for the education, the visit, my friend. Have fun at the stadium this week as you honor Manny Ramirez. Should be a lot of fun. Thank you for taking time to join us again, Bobby.
Always fun, Ray. Take care, sir. Go Guardians.